Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of What in the World is Happening, the show about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. Hello, everybody. I'm Sabina Qureshi, broadcasting from Edmonton, Canada. And with me today are Elisa Graf from Germany. Hi, Elisa. Sabina Qureshi, broadcasting from Edmonton, Canada. Thanks for being here. And Rich Teich from the USA. Hi, Rich.
Hi, Sabina. Hi, Elisa.
And so glad to have you both with us. We're going to talk about the constitution of man, something that interests all of us because we're all human beings. And we always want to know what are we? Who are we? Why are we like this? What's going on? Is there some kind of plan? Or were we just dumped here by accident? So before we jumped into the topic, I just want to mention that we will do 30 minutes of transmission meditation at the end of the program. You're welcome to join us for as long as you like. It's a very potent and effective group meditation, and anyone can do it. You don't have to have prior experience. You just have to be over 12 years of age. So let's jump in now. So the constitution of man, who are we? Where do we come from? Why are we like this? What's really going on? So the very first thing we want to do is show you this. This image represents the energy that is flowing into, through, and out of each of us all the time. So I would guarantee that the majority of people don't see this. Most of us don't see this. Maybe some very few people do. And generally we can feel energy, tired, not tired, but we have no idea that this is really what's going on all the time. So Elisa, would you like to comment on this?
Well, I think the point is that we're spiritual beings in a physical body. Essentially, most people probably wonder, who they are. Most of us are always wondering, what's the purpose of life? What's the meaning? We're actually souls in incarnation, living in physical bodies and expressing in the physical world in that way. But that's not all we are. I mean, we're actually light in essence, essentially. And the energy of the cosmos is coursing through us all the time, whether we're conscious of it or not. That's part of our evolutionary process, how we evolve too.
And the fact, Rich, can you say something about how this connects to the planetary field of energy? Like, so that we each have a field of energy, around us and in us.
Yes, looks like you're on the slide, you're referencing the etheric energies.
Correct.
And underneath our physical body of cells, the nervous system, circulatory system, there is a body of energy that substands and gives energy to the entire body itself through the cells and through the organs, through our nervous system and our brain. So we're part of a network, a web of energy that is one with the entire planet, and all the kingdoms in nature are part of this web of energy. The web of energy is also part of the energy of the solar system. So this web basically is the conduit through which higher energies flow, the energies that produce evolution, for example, the energies that produce life itself, the energies which produce consciousness, are flowing continuously through this web of energy that we call the etheric energy. And then I think we'll also introduce the emotional body that we have and the mental body that we have as well. So we're a composite being, and then what holds all of that together is the energy that we call the soul.
So there's a lot going on. I mean, a lot more than is visible to the naked eye.
Yes. We're very blind to most of what goes on in the universe.
That sounds like an understatement. Well, and so we're going to jump now to, you were talking about solar or the sun. And this is a photo of the sun, and it shows you that there's a lot going on there in terms of movement of energy. And so this, we want to show you this just to talk about the fact that there is a correspondence between what we're seeing here with the sun and what happens with us, just as we saw in the previous picture there. And so just as we are energy beings, the sun is also an energy being. We see the physical body of the sun, but there's a lot more to the sun than just that. Just as with ourselves, we see our physical bodies, but there's a lot more going on. than just the physical part, the part that we see.
Yes, when you see a picture that shows the X-ray photograph of the sun, or the ultraviolet energies, they don't. This is not what you normally would see, a picture of the sun in visible light, but you can see that it's a massive fields of electromagnetic fields, and so all those lines that you're seeing there are the electromagnetic field lines. So analogously, the human being has these electromagnetic field lines on subtle planes and the etheric level. And that those are dynamic, they're constantly exchanging energy, they're moving around. And so in the same way, the sun, the heart of the sun is analogous to the heart of the human being. And that we're one with the heart of all in the solar system.
That's mind-boggling. It really is. Well, and the next picture, I think this is also mind-boggling, is the fact that the Earth that we live on is also a great energy being. And we only see its physical body. So we see the actual planet. But this is also a being, according to the Ageless Wisdom teaching. And we're part of this being, just as the cells in our body are part of us.
Yeah, essentially, that's actually true, because our Earth is actually ensouled by a spiritual being, it's called a planetary logos, and in the Ageless Wisdom teachings, it might also be thought of as that we ourselves are kind of thought forms in that being's consciousness, and he's upholding. His name is Sana Kumara. He's upholding the matter of the planet and all that is part of our planetary life, that aspect. And in fact, there's a plan for our planet as well, and we're all part of it. Most people are just fully unaware of these realities, the fact that we are all part of a plan of evolution on this planet that also is involved with the plan of evolution for the solar system, and then beyond that, the cosmos.
That's right. So there's also a being who ensouls the solar system, right? So much greater being. And beyond that, in our galaxy as well, the Milky Way, that is the body of manifestation of a very vast being. So vast that I don't think we can conceive of what exactly that is. But consciousness exists everywhere. Oops, I think I skipped a slide there. Let me go back. Consciousness exists everywhere throughout cosmos, and we are connected to all of every part of cosmos through our bodies, through our consciousness, through all the parts of us, because all of us is part of an energy field, and that field is connected. There's no separation. So we perceive a separation. We see our physical body, like I'm sitting here and I'm not part of the wall, but I'm surrounded by, excuse me, atoms and molecules of air. And so I'm connected through everything to everything. And of course, many Eastern philosophies say this, and more in physics, scientists are saying this as well. But the fact that we don't perceive it simply means that we're generally not thinking that way. But I think that is changing. I think more and more people are talking about our connectedness, and more people are acting from that place of seeing things that way. So there is a real shift taking place. And this next slide that I jumped to before, this is just to talk about, this is a picture of, it's a micron electro, how do you say that?
Photograph.
Yeah, from a microscope that can see at the level of cells. So what you see is these are actual individual cells. And so just as all the cells in our body are alive and living their own lives, but they're part of us. They're part of a much larger entity. And so we also are like a cell in the body of humanity to begin with. And then beyond that, of course, our planet, the Earth. And so talking about humanity, we just want to mention this one concept, and that is that within humanity, you have so many different people, energies, minds, points of view, feelings. And this is the beauty of the human race, of humanity, is that you have this multiplicity of beings. Many, we're millions, we're billions. And yet there is no need for conformity. We don't have to be the same. In the fundamental way, we're the same, but the expression of that is varied and really there's a fantastic range. And so we just wanted to show this picture to say that's a wonderful thing. Do either of you want to say something about that?
Well, you could call it also unity and diversity.
Right.
And I was thinking about the slide though before, and I thought maybe we could just touch on the fact that our physical bodies, our cells in our physical bodies, everything in our material physical sense is made up of tiny Davic lives, elementals. And essentially this process of evolution, which is about the spiritualizing of matter, has to do with the fact that over time, this higher aspect of ourselves, the soul, begins to have more control over those tiny Davic lives. So there's a process of evolution taking place on that level as well, as we go through this process of the evolution of consciousness through ourselves.
Also, in the same way that the body is made up of tiny cells, the emotional body is also made up of tiny cells, and the mental body is also made up of tiny cells. And so through this process of the energy pouring down through this personality as a composite, they are evolving toward self-consciousness over billions of years. And that the soul is the energy which holds all of that together and provides the link between the lower personality and the higher spiritual aspects that make us up. The higher spiritual energies, which are, again, a part of the being who ensouls this planet that we call the planetary logos of the Earth, consists of three higher energies, the energies of will or purpose, because everything on this planet is permeated with purpose, the energies of love and wisdom, and the energies of the mind, the higher mind that allows for the purpose to be reflected down into matter.
And so that's what we're seeing here in this picture is we're seeing that the triangle on the left with the yellow dots, we call that the higher self, which has one of those yellow dots in each of those different levels that you just described, the level of will, love, wisdom, and the higher mind, abstract thought.
So the beings that we would call the masters of wisdom, who have completed the evolutionary journey for humanity, and the few who have stayed behind to help humanity as the spiritual hierarchy, the remainder of the people who've evolved to become masters have left the planet, gone on to higher work. They are the intermediaries for the planetary logos to have his purpose for the planet embodied as a plan that's working out through humanity over the millions of years that humanity has been here and basically as an animal man united at some point with the higher aspects of itself through the soul, through this evolutionary process. And we're getting to a point in the evolution of humanity that everybody feels there's something special about the time that we're in now, and that these higher energies are manifesting through us, but they're also encountering the residual energies of the past, which are trying to hold us into the old processes of, and I think you were at some point going to mention that we're in a kind of a juncture between two ages, two different periods that energies are characterized by certain qualities, which are at kind of a war with each other. And that's what we're seeing, the stress on the planet right now in so many different areas, whether it's political or whether environmental or social, that these energies are represented by human beings on the planet. And so people are taking up sides, one side or the other, whether they're voting for a future that'll be safe for everyone on the planet, or they're going to go back and keep doing the same old things that we've done in the past. And unfortunately, that will destroy the planet if we do that.
So just coming back to the idea that there are higher levels of consciousness, and that they express through different bodies. So we, that is individual people, we are these higher levels of energy, and we express them through sort of successively lower, but in the sense not of worse or morally inferior or anything like that, simply slower vibration. So just as we know with physical matter that solid matter, in solid matter, the atoms are vibrating at a much slower speed than in liquid. And if you heat liquid, you speed up the vibration, then you get steam, vapor, or gas. So in the same way, these different levels also go from the slowest vibration, that's dense physical, through etheric physical, which is also physical, but that would be like finer than gas, what we know as gas. And then the astral or emotional level is an even finer or a faster vibration. Mental is faster than that. And you've got both what's called lower mind and higher mind. Lower mind would be concrete thought, like I'm working with actual physical things. I'm trying to arrange them. I'm organizing stuff. Higher mind, abstract thought. That's concepts. That's ideas. And then you keep going up. If you look on this chart, you see these different levels. But what I find fascinating is that all of this is connected through us. That is, we're not separate from any of it. So even what we call the divine, sort of the highest level here, is part of us.
Yes, and permeating all of this is fire. You can think of the fire of the sun, but then the fire is in the atom. The fire is in each one of us, keeping our bodies warm, for example. That's a manifestation of fire at a simple level. The emotions can be a fiery energy. The mind is a fiery energy. So really, fire permeates the cosmos wherever we are. It's just at different grades or different levels of this fiery energy, which permeates all existence.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we have this little picture here to show, again, the same idea, just a little bit differently, that you have the highest level, the spark of God, that individual spark of God, and then what we call the soul, which is an intermediary. It's reflecting down to the lower level, which is us, what we call ourselves, our mental, emotional, and physical body, our personality. And so it's just another way of representing the same thing. And then we have this little, oh, sorry, go ahead, Elisa.
I was just going to say, I think it's also important just to talk about the fact that, we're a result of hundreds of thousands of lifetimes. And it takes quite a while before we come to recognize that there's a higher aspect to ourselves. Many lifetimes, hundreds of thousands. So we're all a mosaic in a sense of all those lives. So there's a process at work in each of us. And essentially over and over again, exactly the law of rebirth brings us back over and over again. But we never forget these experiences of our prior incarnations. They are actually, the soul is a repository for these experiences. So the whole purpose of this process also is for the soul to sort of collect these experiences over this long journey. It's actually for the process of the spiritualizing process. We're all sort of, in a sense, outlets for the monad, for the spark of God to learn in this dense physical world. And in a sense, all these experiences are kept in the soul. And every lifetime, we have a different personality. We have what are called these 3 permanent atoms that are still there after the death of the body. And before every birth, before each time a person is born again as a new personality, the soul decides what the energies of that personality will be based on those 3 permanent atoms. They basically set the tone for the next lifetime. And this is all with the purpose in mind of inculcating or bringing to the individual more experiences that are needed.
So wait, so you're saying that the spark of God, that is the individuality that we are, each of us, which is we each have we are like a piece of God, if you want to put it like that. So that's what we call the monad in the Ageless Wisdom teachings. You're saying that this aspect of us, or this this monad, needs to learn and evolve as well. So it's also learning through the experiences that we're having on the physical
Yeah,
plane.
essentially, maybe Rich could explain it a little better than I can, but essentially, there's a process at work whereby we, in the process of spiritualizing matter through our bodies, are also bringing that whatever that is learned back in a sense. And so essentially, that's what the process is also about.
Yeah, the energy that's coming from the highest levels of this being who ensouls the planet is pouring down through the various kingdoms in nature and helping them to evolve. It's all a process of evolution, from the densest form level up to the highest spiritual level. There's nothing in the universe that does not continually evolve. And so that's what this process is. So as you were saying, the monads do evolve themselves because they're a cell in the body of the planet, which is evolving itself to higher and levels of not only consciousness, but levels of beings that we really just call a word will or purpose or intelligence or love, wisdom. Those are whole realms of being that we can only give some name to, but are so vast that we can't really imagine them because they're a quality of the highest levels of the being of who ensouls this planet. And so the monad needs to have some experience down at the lowest level, but it's also providing a service by raising the energies of all of this composite being who we are, to higher and higher levels of consciousness. So everything keeps evolving and the energies pour down from the top. They meet down at the lowest, all the way down to the lowest levels where our personality is made up of denser and denser material, and that raises them up by that process of evolution.
And so in the process of raising them up, it also gains something from that process, right? Itself.
Yes, because the end of the process for the individual human being, after many lifetimes of being different personalities, all of that experience, all of that energy is accumulated in the soul, and then that soul, when it raises its vibration to a certain level, opens up a channel to the being who is our true self, the spark of God, the monad, and that energy then pours in. It's like the energy at the sun. It's so blazing that it burns up everything, but it pulls in together all of the experience that you've had and retains that. So the monad accumulates everything that you've experienced on the denser physical levels, and that's never lost. And at the same time, that fire is raising up all the cells in all the bodies that we have to a higher level of being.
So I have just one more thing to say just before we move on here, and that is, Elisa, you talked about, and both you and Rich, both of you have said, that nothing is lost. So all the experiences through all the lifetimes reside within us. And yet I don't remember anything from any of my previous lifetimes. So you're saying all of that experience is kept, but I'm not conscious of it. That is, in any individual lifetime, I don't remember what I did, say, in my last lifetime or 10 lifetimes ago or 100 lifetimes ago.
At some point along the way, you will remember, but it's best that people not remember because it would be too much. We already have, I just think about the issues. Psychology today is so focused on childhood trauma, for example. I mean, most of us are carrying around wounds from our childhoods that we still haven't resolved in our 50s. And imagine if we were carrying around hundreds of thousands of lifetimes of the trauma that we've all experienced. So there are reasons why it's sort of safeguarded,
Right.
until we're really ready to be able to look at it. And at some point, it's been mentioned in various spiritual biographies where people awaken to this reality, they can remember some of their past lives. And maybe some people can remember all of their past lives, but it depends on where you are on the ladder of evolution and sort of what you can handle, I think.
And so these permanent atoms are in fact where all the experience is kept or exists, so that, for example, let's say I learned how to play the violin in this lifetime. So that means, well, when I die or when I exit this life, that information, like all of the muscle memory in my hands and arms from playing the violin, all of my understanding about how to read notes, that type of stuff, it'll all be there in my permanent atoms, so that when I reincarnate the next time, I'll have that knowledge. Like I won't have to start over again, right? Is that?
Well, to some extent, I don't think most of us remember those things, but you can look at prodigies and look at what's going on in the world today. There are lots of kids being born who somehow know how to play instruments or to paint or do things. And you wonder, well, it seems pretty clear to many that they obviously brought that with them, that they actually had that experience before.
Well,
So,
Mozart was an amazing child
exactly.
prodigy.
Right.
Many of the famous composers were,
Right.
composing very complex music at the age of 6, that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say that a lot of people have capacities that they, you might just say are talents, which most likely were developed in another life or many lives.
Right, because it's more than you've had time to do this time around,
Right.
for example.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and we wanted to talk about individuality as well, right? Why is it so important? The fact that each of us is very aware of ourselves as an individual. And that is something that, according to the Ageless Wisdom teachings, it's a specific aspect of human beings. Animals, for example, don't have that type of awareness of themselves. They're in the process maybe of developing it, but they don't have individualized souls, right?
I think Rich is really good.
Yeah, it's a group soul. So there's a mineral monad, there's a vegetable kingdom monad, there's an animal monad, and so those three lower kingdoms, we as human beings have an aspect of all of those kingdoms in ourselves, and so as we evolve, then we're evolving the individual cells in those bodies. So what happens is that not all the cells are at the same level of development. So when you come back in another lifetime, your soul will pull in the atoms from the various levels of mental, emotional, and physical that vibrate to its higher level of development. So it's not like that all the atoms, for example, on the emotional plane or all the atoms on the mental plane are all the same. Some of them have higher levels of vibration, and so as you evolve to a higher level, you draw those higher level elemental lives into your new body, and that's projected forward so that everybody's evolving together to higher levels of consciousness.
And this individuality was a gift from the solar angels. Now, who are the solar angels?
Well, in this large system of which we are a part, the being who ensouls the planet as a separate entity that we would call the monad experiences itself as one with the whole being who ensouls the planet, but it needs to have that individual experience through an intermediary. So these beings who are called solar angels, these mental expressions who are they call them the nirvanis from the previous solar system. They're at a higher level. They're basically great fiery mental angels who come down into the middle between the highest spiritual monad that we are in the highest levels and having cosmic consciousness, down to the lower levels where people have a kind of an individual experience as a mental, emotional, and physical personality. But those levels, again, like the animals, the vegetables, and the minerals, have a group consciousness, but they don't have an individual consciousness. So the gift that's given by these solar angels is this gift of individuality, which they have gleaned in a previous existence, in a previous incarnation as a group, in a previous solar system. So that is one of the special qualities which we get in this evolutionary process, is this individual point of view on things. And the destiny is that everybody can preserve their individual point of view and experience themselves as one with this being who ensouls the whole planet. So that's why it's important. Everything that evolves passes through the human kingdom. Whether it's the angels or whether it's the elementals, as they expand, they all become human beings at some point in some part of this evolution of the solar system. So that's why it's a very unique position. And it's, again, everything is kind of a composite made up of lower aspects of life and higher aspects of life. And so human beings are at this fourth kingdom out of the 7, which potentially unites the highest aspects and the lowest aspects of who we are.
That's a fascinating vision because it's so vast. I mean, it really is. And yet it's also very particular. It's very specific. I wanted to just welcome our viewers because I realize people are watching on Message of Hope Weekly on YouTube, on Twitch, and also all of our viewers on Facebook, on Share International Canada Facebook. Thank you for being here to everybody. And any questions that you have, please post them in the chat and we will answer them and we'll do our best to address them. We'd love to hear your questions. So talking about these immense, different levels of being that all exist in us, we want to talk about something called the New World Prayer, which has been given to us by one of the Masters of Wisdom so that we can increasingly experience our connectedness to all of this. And I think Rich and Elisa, you're going to talk about the lines from it, right? We're going to start with the very beginning. Do you want to read that, Elisa?
I am the creator of the universe. I am the father and mother of the universe.
Wow, that's beautiful. Tell us something about that, Rich.
Well, we were talking about the being who ensouls the solar system, and you could think of that as God. And that great being, what we see as the sun is just a manifestation, a physical manifestation of this being who exists on all these higher levels of consciousness and of being that we could just have names to. So there is a will or purpose that's being worked out through this solar system from this great being who ensouls the whole solar system. And all the consciousness of all the different gradations that make up the solar system are a part of the consciousness of the being who ensouls this whole solar system. So in this affirmation, it's reminding the person what their true nature is. And so it lifts your mind out of the everyday mundane world into at least aspiring to a realization of who you are as the highest aspect of ourselves. So that's talking about who the creator of the universe and the father and mother of the universe, the two poles of spirit and matter, produce consciousness.
So that when you say the two poles of spirit and matter, I'm assuming the father aspect is the spirit aspect and the mother aspect is the matter aspect. Is that right?
Yes. In the esoteric teachings, there is just one continuity in the universe, and it has various kind of gradations from the highest level that we would call spirit to the lowest level that we would call matter, but they're all part of the same universe. They're all part of that same continuity. So in the creation process, where the unity consciousness expresses itself as a duality, as it comes down into lower levels, then we have the father and the mother aspect of the universe recognized in this affirmation.
That's powerful. We have a question from Raywin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. And you asked, what happens when we reincarnate to that image of a past life, for example, a spiritual guide? Can you clarify that? Are you asking what happens when we reincarnate? That what happens in terms of our relationship to spiritual guides we had in a past life? I'm guessing maybe that's what you mean. So Elisa, can you answer that? What would happen?
I'm not really sure I can answer that one.
Okay.
But I would guess, that essentially whoever you're connected to on a spiritual level is going to be able to track you from lifetime to lifetime. Pretty much, at least considering the masters, they operate in this way because all of us are connected, whether we're conscious of it or not, to an ashram. And an ashram we will eventually one day become a member of.
Okay, wait, can I just stop you for a sec? Because ashram is not English. And what is that word?
Sorry. Okay,
what does
sorry.
that mean?
Right.
Yeah.
The Masters of Wisdom, who we mentioned before, essentially they are the guardians of the process of the evolution of consciousness on our planet. They are the custodians of all the energies that are coming from cosmos and entering our planet for this process of evolution of humanity, of consciousness. And essentially, there are 7 ashrams. There are 63 masters. on our planet. Is that right? It's Rich at 63, 64 with Maitreya. And then, but essentially, every single human being will eventually be a participant when they enter the kingdom of souls, essentially, as we were talking about, the bridging between the human evolution, the human kingdom, and the spiritual kingdom, which is the kingdom above it. Essentially, when any one of us steps into that, we become a member of, or we already were, but essentially we are effectively beginning to work with the ashram that we're already members of.
So we're already connected, but
yeah,
through our evolutionary process of our shifting and growing consciousness, we become aware that we're connected. And then we can,
yeah.
it's sort of like as though we lived in a house, but we were asleep. And then even though we're in the house, because we're asleep, we don't know we're in the house. We can't talk to anybody else in the house. Then when we wake up, we realize, oh, look, there's all these people here. I'm in a house.
Well, we haven't talked about the rays, which are a whole other subject, but essentially we're all of us composite of energies, and the soul has a specific energetic ray or quality, and the monad also has a different one. So essentially from eon to eon, the soul remains the same, but every lifetime, the energies of our personality are different. So we have affiliations. We come in as groups, and we are working together with other people, whether we're conscious of it or not. So
Okay.
essentially, yeah, this process of evolution starts from the very early stages in our development. So we're always connected to spiritual support and spiritual guides. So I would guess that whoever they're talking about will know how to find them.
Right. So that connection doesn't go away. Exactly.
Yeah. So Sabina, to intent maybe of the original question, the person was talking about spirit guides. So there's different ways of talking about the masters, and you're also working within beings who are associated with executing the law of karma. So as you have groups of souls that come into incarnation, they all have relationships that get built up over time. And when you're ready for your next incarnation, there are many factors, including this law of karma, that governs the relationships between people in terms of the law of cause and effect with what you've had with past relationships. So you can have a spirit guide, but you could also say it's one of the masters, that you're always having teachers who are helping you assimilate the experience you've had between lifetimes, and also to guide you to what's best for your development in the next, in your succeeding lifetimes. So help is always available. The souls are not separate by any means. They're always connected, and they're connected with higher aspects of themselves and in beings whose job it is to help work out the law of karma, and also to help you with whatever your succeeding life and what's best for your development. So everything the help is always available.
That's a wonderful vision. And Raywin, thanks for confirming that we have answered your question. That's great. Let's go on to the next couple of lines of this. Do you want to read that, Elisa?
Everything comes from me. Everything shall return to me.
Rich, you were going to comment on this?
Yes, that's illustrating that there is this great breath in the universe. There's the breathing out, where you have the manifestation of the universe, and then there's the breathing in, where everything it's like individual lives and collective lives, everything you've experienced through that great breath of out then comes back to you, and that becomes a part of you. So that's really, this is looking at it from a cosmic point of view, but you can also see it from an individual point of view, that everything from the soul is extended out into manifestation and then is withdrawn at the end of that life and comes back into the soul again. And everything that you've experienced, especially that is of use, like wisdom, for example, and like intelligence, then becomes assimilated into the soul as part of you.
I think it comes back to the idea of nothing is ever lost. There are no beginnings, there are no endings, nothing is ever lost. There's only connection.
I like that.
Everything is always there.
And then if we just put the last three lines up, which also kind of form a unit, can you read those, Elisa?
Mind, spirit, and body are my temples, for the self to realize in them my supreme being and becoming.
Rich, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so the mind, spirit, and body are emotional, mental, emotional, and physical. They're using the word spirit in the same way as we use the word emotional. And that by putting it in terms of temples, they're really trying to raise how you regard this process, to make it a sacred process of your evolution. Because ultimately everything is sacred in the universe when you experience it that way. So that self, that soul, eventually will realize the highest aspects of itself, which we call the supreme being. And so that's the individual spark of God, which when you experience it as cosmic consciousness, you will realize that you are one with the universe, but then you're still the unique point of view through all of that.
So there's a real idea of the fact that our bodies, we're living in them, but that's not who we are, right? I mean, in a sense, using the word temple there.
Yes. This is a very eloquent way of expressing
Yeah.
a very profound affirmation to remind you to who you are, because you get lost in everyday, kind of lost in everyday experience and forgetting who you really are. And so that's the power of this. And it's recommended that you say that every day to remind yourself of who you are and what this process is of your mind, body, and spirit. And you're evolving. Everything that you are is evolving, and you are at the center of this evolutionary process if you choose to recognize it.
And so there's a link in the chat so you can have this text accessible and available and use it. And it does have a profound effect when you say it.
I'd like to just say also
Mhm.
that that Benjamin Creme, writer and author and artist Benjamin Creme, who is the source for a lot of the information that we share today, he explained that all such prayers or mantras depend for their effect on the application of the focused will. And so you have to aspire, you have to actually use your will when you say this. It's an affirmation. And the most effective way to say it is to use it to, or say it is to think the words with the focused will, the attention at the ajna center, which is the chakra between the eyebrows, which actually creates a connection between the soul and the brain. And when you say this with that kind of intention, very seriously, there will grow inside you an understanding or a relationship, an awareness of your true self. So that's what it's given for.
Okay, well, that's important. In other words, how you say it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the next slide, which is just to show that this idea that your body is a temple also is in the Bible, in Corinthians. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? So that's a very succinct way of saying, in essence, what we've been talking about here.
Right.
And now we have some drawings that were made by a lady named Josephine that show us in a kind of very, very interesting way what happens when we meditate. And this is important because the connection between the higher aspects and the lower aspects is bridged when you meditate. So that's one of the essential purposes of meditation. Do either of you want to say anything about that?
I just wanted to say that at some point after many thousands of lifetimes, according to the Ageless Wisdom teachings, it really takes quite a while before the human being actually starts to have a sense of this higher self, and the soul can then kind of start to work through the individual. And people begin to look more deeply at the meaning and purpose of life itself. And this is when one really begins to aspire to a relationship with that higher self. And meditation is sort of given to us to bring that relationship into reality, that we're actually, it helps us to connect with that higher aspect of ourselves. So people then generally have a yearning to do some form of meditation in some lifetime. Many people already have had lifetimes of meditation. That's why they're drawn to it. But it's generally because one is actually approaching a point where there really can be a connection between the soul and its lower reflection, the personality.
Right, like a conscious connection, because the connection is always there, and right, whether
Exactly.
we're aware of it or not. Yeah. And so we will be doing a meditation at the end of this program shortly that's called transmission meditation, which is a group meditation. And so we have these pictures, again, drawings, just to show how you could imagine what it's like when people meditate together. So for example, here is a visualization of a meditation group of 3 people. And you can see there's a triangle formed above them of light because of the connection they're making, each of them, to their higher self through the focus of meditation. And then here's a picture where you see 5 people meditating, and there are many more interconnecting lines. And then what Josephine did was to show us what that would look like. You can imagine this if you had groups linked together that would make up a network of light across the earth. And so here, each of the nodes, it represents a group, a meditation group. And then the last picture is just to show how you can end up with that network can be encircling the whole planet. And we have now a picture just to show the different evolutions of the solar system. Now, we've been talking about these. So for example, the simplest or lowest in the sense of speed of vibration is mineral. And then we go to vegetable or plant, and then animal, then human, that's us, then spiritual. That means as we become more aware of our connection to the higher levels, and we're able to function on those levels more and more, and that's where the Masters of Wisdom reside. Planetary, we've mentioned that as well, and solar. Now, before we talk about this in more detail, I'd like to mention a question from Bob Jordan in St. Louis. Hi, Bob. Thanks for being here today. Now, you asked about your pet dogs. You said they each had a unique personality. And so you're saying, wait a minute, we were saying that the lower kingdoms, like animal, for example, don't have individuality. And how can we answer that? Like, animals are a bridge to humanity, like they're evolving towards that. So what does it mean when you can see that an animal has a very distinct personality? Can any of you answer that? Either of you answer that?
Well, the individuality refers to your self-awareness as an individual.
Mhm.
So dogs can have developed their emotional bodies to some extent, and even the rudimentary minds, where they have intelligence, they demonstrate intelligence as instinct,
Mhm.
but they don't think of themselves in the same way that a human being thinks of themselves as a separate individual with a history and a future and a life and a consciousness and relationships. You see, it's much higher dimension of awareness that is represented by this awareness. So when you become more aware of the higher aspects of yourself through meditation, and you're beginning to enter the spiritual kingdom, your awareness even expands much more into a much more vast space than just being a separate individual. And when you also contact those higher states of being, then you come in contact with the purpose aspect, the will aspect. And that's the link where you then take your individuality and it now works for the planet. You've sacrificed everything that you've experienced in all of your lifetimes, and it's dedicated to now helping the plan unfold for the rest of the lower kingdoms and the human kingdom. So that's the unique process that goes on for each person. And they do that through the mind, and that's why the mind is developed through studying, through education. That's why the masters always talk about that education is the most important thing to expand your consciousness through your mind. Not too many dogs and cats go to college, for example, so or feel a need to.
So what's interesting, Rich, in what you're saying, and this is something, it's a new concept for me, but I understand what you're saying, is that it's not that the animal, the dog or whatever animal it is, it's not that they don't have a unique personality. We perceive it, we see the personality, we experience it, but it's that their conception of themselves isn't of being an individual. And that's really the big difference, right?
Absolutely. And because they're not evolving as separate individuals, they're still part of the animal kingdom as a whole. And so they haven't gone through that kind of that central focal point of becoming separate human beings, which they will eventually. But it may take another probably millions of years before the highest levels of the animal kingdom then the door is open, in a sense, to become individuals. And that's where, once they've developed the mind principle to a certain point, then these beings who ensoul the soul, who create the soul body out of themselves, these solar angels, then they will come in and make that link to the mental, the highest development of that individual to be animal. And they would be like essentially an early animal man at that point in their evolution. And then they would be able to link up with the individualizing process through the solar angel at that point, but millions of years from now.
Okay. Wow.
Well,
Nice answer.
While we have this chart up, I was just going to also say that it's important that we remember that actually, as we talked about at the very beginning, energy is always moving through all of us from the cosmic level all the way through all these different kingdoms. And in fact, the human kingdom, without realizing it, is transmitting spiritual energy to the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom is doing the same to the plant, and the plant to the mineral. So this is a process that's going on without our being consciously aware of it, that we are actually transmitting spiritual energies to help the evolutionary process of the kingdoms below. That's why humanity is in the middle. But also the fact that, oh, I don't remember where I was going to go with that. Rich, maybe you have something else to add to that.
Well, I think we would call that process domestication. So the most developed animals are the ones who've had a very prolonged contact with human beings.
Right.
So the elephant and the dog and the horse, these have all had a long history with human beings. And so that's raised their vibrations so that they've become the most evolved in their animal kingdom.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have another question that I've just seen in the chat. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. Die Orange or D Orange, Schnecke said, and thank you for the question. This is great. I wonder if the universe itself has permanent atoms from the various planes that carry over from breath to breath. I'm not sure, are you asking about our breath to breath or the universe's breath to breath? But can either of you sort of answer this?
Yeah, I don't know if you had a diagram to show that, but even on those levels of being that we call the abstract mental plane, the love wisdom, and the Atmic plane of will or purpose, there are permanent atoms, so that nothing is lost, everything is preserved, even at those great states of being have because everything is evolving, there needs to be some way of preserving all of those higher. Yes, so there are permanent atoms for the Buddhic level, the love wisdom level, the higher mental with the true permanent atom there, and the Atmic. So those are true permanent atoms, because the lower so-called permanent atoms are eventually dissolved, and all of that experience then is brought into the monad, and which is expressing itself through those higher qualities. So these lower will, love, purpose, and higher mental are actually just aspects of the monad. They're not separate. See, this is hard to express like this when it's kind of linear, but they're just aspects, in the same way that when you express love or you express intelligence, it's not separate from you. It's an aspect of yourself.
Right. Yeah. Oh, okay. D Orange, just to add to the question about the breath to breath, says the out breathing or breath that Rich mentioned earlier, that you mentioned earlier, Rich.
I think it's the breath at the cosmic level of breathing out, which creates the universe. And then
like everything came from me, everything shall return to me, right? Yeah.
It's the same way with the individual soul. It has birth, and then it has death, but nothing is lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the form which is being breathed out and breathed in again for the purpose of experience.
Well, so maybe I understand this question now to be about, for example, if we're talking about successive levels of being, so if, for example, the galaxy is also a being, then the universe supposedly is also a being. So maybe that's what you're asking about, when one evolution of one universe comes to its end, for the next evolution, will the permanent atoms from all of these planes of existence be there ready to begin a new sort of evolution or a new universe?
Yes, in cosmology, science now knows, astronomy now shows that when a sun dies, a solar system gets to the end of its life, having burned up all of its hydrogen and helium, eventually it will go into, say, a nova, and all of the in that process of converting hydrogen and helium to higher, more advanced levels of elements, becoming carbon, and that's where all of our iron and oxygen and nitrogen came from, because our solar system had a previous incarnation, and it was much more primitive, and now we're able to take all of those atoms which were evolved through that process of becoming a star and incorporate them into ourselves. So all of the elements in our own bodies and in our planet, everything that we experience as our planet, were forged in the furnaces of a previous star, and then blown out, and then brought back together again for the next incarnation of our solar system. So that's a very physical, astronomy, cosmological way of looking at this evolutionary process.
Wow. So really it is an infinite process. So the same kind of death and rebirth that we go through as individual human beings, our solar system goes through them, a galaxy goes through them. It's happening at all the levels. And thank you, D. Orange, for replying and saying yes, that was what you were asking.
Yeah, and at the very beginning, we have what astronomy calls the Big Bang. So
Right.
that was the birth of everything that we can possibly conceive of, at least in the physical universe, where it will go, how it will evolve, but eventually, something will happen and it will be withdrawn back into itself again, to prepare for another incredible, whatever the next thing is. It's bigger than the universe we can understand, right? So it goes on everywhere at all levels.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Well, we're coming to the end here, and we're going to go into the meditation part of this show, and we just wanted to talk about ways to evolve. That the main two things that you can do to help further your evolution is, one is meditation, and the other is service. And this is according to Benjamin Crumb and the Ageless Wisdom teaching. Meditation, as we've said, strengthens the connection between the soul, the higher levels, and the personality. And service helps to develop the positive traits that reflect the nature of the soul. So the more you do things for others or serve a greater purpose, and others doesn't have to only be other human beings, doing something for the environment. That's also others, other beings. So service is a function of the soul. The soul, that's what it wants to do. That's what we as souls want to do. So when you do that, when you do service, you're helping to grow the connection that you have with that part of yourself.
I want to just add to that, and that is, as you beautifully said it, but I want to just add to that, and that is that the soul only knows connection to everything. And so that's an expression. When you serve, you see yourself in your brother or sister, or, in everything. And essentially, that's why you desire to serve. So as we become who we really are, the soul, that's what we desire to do.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And so transmission meditation, which we will do in a few minutes, combines meditation with service. So it links both of those together. And would either of you like to talk about how it does that?
Well, transmission meditation, it's a group service. We were talking about how energy is being transmitted from all the different kingdoms. Spiritual energy is coming through all of us without our being conscious of it. In transmission meditation, we actually are making a conscious effort to connect ourselves. As we do this particular form of meditation, we are automatically connected with the spiritual hierarchy, the spiritual kingdom. And we offer our chakras, in a sense, to step down energies, these cosmic energies that would otherwise bounce off most people. And these energies are actually being used by the spiritual guardians of our of our evolutionary process, the Masters of Wisdom, for the purpose of helping humanity in different ways. So these energies are needed, and rather than it being an unconscious process, with transmission meditation, it's a conscious process that we elect as a service to be disciplined, to sit, and to allow these energies to be sent through us in a scientific manner by the Masters of Wisdom. And in the process of this, and they only send as much energy through each individual's chakras to the extent that they can, that's good for them. So it's they are the ones who guard and guide the process. These energies are very transformative. So we're doing a service, and at the same time, these energies are transforming us, and they
So
help
Lisa,
to evolutionary process.
sorry, I interrupted you too soon, but I wanted to just talk about the word step down, and you talk about how this is a service. So the word step down is referring to changing the vibrationary rate, or the rate of vibration of the energies, right?
The energies are at such a high vibration, they would
Mhm.
normally bounce off of individual people, society, humanity. And so these energies need to be stepped down through, like a transformer, the way that it works in electrical transformers. These energies are then stepped down to a lower voltage, you could say, so that the masters can then use them in the world.
So the reason that they bounce off of us when they're at a higher level is because in order to absorb something, you have to be vibrating at the same frequency, right? Yeah. And you can't absorb it if it's vibrating at a higher frequency than you are at, or that your mind is at, or your energies are at.
Right.
Yeah,
Rich,
it comes down through the soul. And so the reason that you're focusing your attention on that center between the eyebrows is where your soul's contacting your personality. So your different centers in your body, the different chakras, are all vibrating at different rates. The highest vibration rate is coming down through the soul and through the head centers. So when you focus on the head centers, you're able to contact the highest vibration and hold it there. And meanwhile, the energy is circulating through your heart center, through your throat center, and through the centers, other centers in the brain, and so on. And so those are being stepped down to those chakras which are vibrating at a lower level. And then those levels, those energies are circulated through the group. And then the masters take those energies now, which are down through your lower vibration chakras, and send them out to wherever they're needed on the planet, that they can then be absorbed. So it starts with the head center. It starts with the highest head center. Those energies are vibrating the highest level down through your chakras, which are vibrating at a lower level. And then at that time, they're sent back out again wherever they're needed.
And so when you say wherever they're needed, you're saying the masters know where they're needed. So they're the ones who decide where to send these energies.
That's the point of transmission meditation.
Okay.
We're transmitting energies into us and then back out of us to wherever they're needed to help the planet, help the people on the planet.
It's important that people not try to direct the energies mentally, because in fact, the masters know where these energies are best used. They're very powerful energies. And we often assume, for example, in a conflict somewhere in the world, that energy should be sent there, but often that's too stimulating for that particular situation in a war zone and so forth. So we have to leave the masters to that work.
There's many types of energies that are coming through this process, and we don't really even know the types of energies and what this purpose is being worked out with these energies. They're part of a plan. It's very dynamic.
Yeah. And we, the practitioners of this meditation, benefit immensely from doing it. So for us, there's a real hook, if you want to put it like that.
Most of the time in our ordinary awareness, we never think through this level. We're always reacting at a solar plexus, on emotional level to things. And so, nothing really can change. It has to come down through your highest awareness, where your center is focused here.
And so we want to show you just a picture of Benjamin Creme, the person from whom we have received this information. There are other sources of the Ageless Wisdom teaching, but most of what we've talked about today, and specifically transmission meditation, we have learned about through Benjamin Creme's writings. And he gave lectures for many years, traveled around the world, and we will provide links to his books. And just before we do that, I want to put up one more slide. And this is a quote from one of the masters of wisdom, Maitreya, who says, "I know that within men sits a divine being whose plan it is that love and justice should triumph. This being so, the end is assured." This is a very reassuring message because it tells us that in spite of what we see in the news, all of the chaos and the crisis, destruction, and just sort of a feeling of being on the edge of some terrible cataclysm or in the middle of it already, Maitreya is saying that things are going to work out. And why? Because within each of us sits a divine being, and that's us, the spark of God, whose plan it is that love and justice should triumph. So he's basically saying all of us have that as our plan, whether we are aware of it and connected to that idea or not in our consciousness.
Yes, the planet itself is undergoing a form of speeding up of its own evolutionary process in all kingdoms in nature. And so we're seeing that as stress in so many different, the human being seeing as stress, the different kingdoms in nature have stress. And so that stress is a result of, or that tension results in our speeding up of our evolution. And that's why we're seeing this today. These are energies that are coming from outside the planet that are producing this effect. It's not humanity that's doing it, it's being produced. The effects we see in humanity, but the energies are coming from a much higher level. And there's a purpose behind those energies, as all things coming in from higher levels.
Well, that's good to know. So we're not just careening off in some random way. And so we want to share our resources so that you can get more information if you're interested. And I know that John has put those into the chat as well. So there's .org. A vast body of information is on that website. You can also go onto YouTube to the Share International channel, and you'll see many videos of interviews and talks by Benjamin Creme on all of these topics, and also on the meditation that we're going to do. And there are 4 books that you can download for free as PDFs at share-ecart.com. You can also buy other books. There are a total of 17 books that Benjamin Creme wrote. So these are available, and you could start reading right away if you want to. In addition to all of this, there's a magazine that's published 10 times a year called Share International, and it is available in many languages. You can subscribe to it at share-ecart.com, but you can also read excerpts from the magazine on the website that we just had up, share-international.org. And one more source of information is your podcast, Elisa. You do a podcast, right? Called Mystic Takeaway.
That's right. That's
Do you
right.
want to say something about that?
Yeah, it's a really wonderful opportunity to hear stories from people who've had spiritual experiences, many who've had potentially experiences of meeting the masters in disguise. And they're very heartfelt and soulful, and it's really meant to sort of nourish the souls, essentially. So anybody can, I think that you're going to put up a link for the where to listen to it. There are 36 episodes so far, and I usually put one out every 2 weeks. And I also tell people that I have a Facebook page, and if somebody would like to share an experience on Mystic Takeaway, they can send me a message.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, great. Yeah, because I think many of us have had experiences that were out of the ordinary. But at the time you're just busy with your life, so you carry on. But maybe this will remind some of us.
That's often what happens. Yeah, during
Yeah.
interviews, people often remember, or people listening to the interviews often remember having their own experiences. So, yeah,
That's great. And before we jump into the meditation, I'd like to just mention that in a month we'll be doing another program on environment and consciousness, restoring the integrity of life. And so that will be very interesting to talk about. That's on November 12th at the same time. And so we hope you'll join us again. And now we'll just go straight ahead to doing transmission meditation. And just before we start, I'd like to say you don't have to believe in anything in order to do this. It's not a requirement at all. So you don't have to believe in energy or in God or in any of the things we've been talking about. So it's just something you can actually do. And it is so simple that you could start your own group, or you can do it with people who already have groups. When we begin the meditation, we start by saying something called the Great Invocation. It's a mantra, and it was introduced to the public in 1945. It's used around the world in many languages. You can also use it to do something called triangles meditation, which I think John will put a link to as well. You can use it just by itself as a prayer, but we will be saying it together when we start doing transmission meditation. And just a couple of things, don't do this meditation if you're younger than 12, or you have a pacemaker or heart problems, or some serious imbalance emotionally or psychologically, because the energies are strong, and so they can kind of push you off kilter. The other thing is that during the pandemic that we've all been living through, people have started to connect using Zoom or other platforms online to do this meditation. Prior to that, everybody went and met physically, you know, in somebody's home or in a local bookstore or a meeting room. And so, you know, if you're living with people and you want to do this meditation, that's great, because then you can actually just sit down together and do it. But as we're going to do it today, we'll do it virtually using this platform. And so the basic technique is, as Elisa and Rich were both describing, is that we focus on the ajna center, which is the spot between the eyebrows. If you've never done that before, you can just put your finger here to feel that, what that feels like, and just remember that feeling. And then after we say, or as we're saying the Great Invocation, feel that spot. And there's only one real instruction for this meditation, and that is, if you notice that your attention has gone away from this spot here, you say Om mentally in your mind, not with your voice, but you just say it mentally. And that mantra, Om, will bring your attention back to this spot. So as long as you're connected here, you're in the meditation, right?
I just want to say one other thing, and that is that it's not meant that one repeats the Om over and over again.
Right.
One only says it when one really needs to say it. So there's a different form of meditation that focuses on a mantra like Om, but this is not meant to be like that. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say is that with one's eyes closed, one can also experience the ajna center by rolling one's eyes sort of as if you're looking up at your forehead. And that's another way to feel it inside.
Okay, I didn't know about that. That's interesting. All right, any last comments before we jump in and do a half hour of meditation?
So,
no, okay. Well, who'd like to say it? Because what we'll do is, because of the interference when we have multiple people speaking on Zoom at the same time, one of you, I'll ask one of you to just say it and have your microphone on, and the rest of us will turn our microphone off, but we'll be saying it with you. It looks like Rich has already decided. He's muted himself. So I think it's you, Elisa. You're going to say it.
I'll say it.
Okay. So we'll talk again in 30 minutes.
The Great Invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, Let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
Well, that was 30 minutes. And we're back after meditating. I hope you enjoyed that. And thank you to everybody for being here and for having this wonderful conversation. Thank you, Elisa. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Sabina.
Okay, thank you, Sabina, and the team. Don't forget the team.
That's right. It was very dynamic. Thank you to Cielito in Seattle and to John in Montgomery, Alabama. Thanks to both of you for keeping it all going. And if this information resonates for you, to those of you who are with us today, please share it widely, because I think it's very uplifting and inspiring. I'm certainly inspired after everything that we talked about today. So thanks again. And remember that we have dozens of episodes that you can watch, past episodes, on Message of Hope Weekly on YouTube, on Share International Canada Facebook as well. So there's a lot of information there. And we'll be back in a month on November 12th to talk about consciousness and the environment and integrating those. So thank you once again. And goodbye, everybody. Have a great weekend.